Compound interest is different from simple interest because at the end of each time period, any interest earned is added into the principal for the next time period. I'm going to illustrate the difference by looking at $100 invested for 3 years and at an interest rate of 10% per annum. Now, first of all, let's start with the simple interest, and let's look at what happens on a year-by-year basis, and then we'll compare that with the compound interest. So, at the end of the first year, so I equals PRN, the interest at the end of the first year is the principal was $100, the rate at 10% per annum is 0.1 as a decimal, and N is just the first, we're just doing the first year here. So N in this case is 1 year. So our interest is going to be 100 times 0.1 times 1, which is going to be $10. So at the end of the first year, we have earned $10 interest on our $100 invested. Let's have a look at the second year. It's exactly the same. We have the same principal. So the amount of interest we get at the end of the second year is also $10. And the third year, again, identical. So we have another $10. So our total our total interest that we've earned is $30. And the amount that we now have, the total amount, is our $100 that we started with and our $30 interest. So $100 plus 30, we have $130. Let's compare this now with our compound interest. So we're going to take it over the 3 years. The same amount, the $100, and the same interest rate. But I'm going to look at it on a year-by-year basis. So at the end of the first year, the equation just for one term is actually the same as the equation for the simple interest. So what we're going to have is interest is the PRN, which is our $100, times our 0.1 times our 1, which is going to yield us with $10. So that means that we now have an amount of $110. Now, that becomes our new principal for the next time period. So the interest is added in to the original principal, and for our second year, the interest is going to be our new principal, which is our compounded amount. Compounded means we've added our principal and our interest. So we've got $110, same interest rate for 1 year, and this is going to yield now $11 interest for that second year. So the total amount that we now have is our 110 plus our 11, so we've now got $121. This $121 becomes our new principal for the third year. So we have 121 times our interest rate times 1 year, and it will yield us with $12.10. So our total amount now that we have is our 121 plus our $12.10, which is going to be $133.10. Now compare this with the simple interest amount that we ended up with, which was $130. Our compound interest has given us $133.10. And compound interest, because the interest is being added in and you're getting interest on the interest, you will always end up with more money from compound interest. Now we don't have to do it on a year-by-year basis. We have an equation, a formula, which will work this out for us in one go. Now, it's not I this time, it's A, which is the amount that you end up with. And it's the principal times 1 plus the interest rate and to the power n, where it's n time periods. Now, if we use our previous example, our principal was $100. We had an interest rate of 10%, so a decimal of 0.1, and it was invested for 3 years. And that yielded, if you work that out in your calculator, $133.10. So using our formula, we can work it out in one go. Now, which do you think will yield most interest? If you have a daily compound interest rate, a monthly compound interest rate, or a yearly compounded interest rate? Well, the shorter the time periods, which one do you think? It's going to lead to more interest. So if you invest money in the bank will offer you possibly a monthly interest rate or maybe a yearly interest rate. However, if it's the other way round and you happen to owe money to the bank, for example, if you have a credit card and you haven't paid off the balance, then the bank will charge you interest on that money, and they, of course, will charge you a daily compound interest rate, so they get as much money as they possibly can from you. Let's do a couple of examples to see how this works. What is the interest on $100 invested at 9% per annum for 7 months? Compounded monthly. So the first thing we always do is write out our formula that we're going to use. A equals P 1 plus R to the N. And over here we write down what our pronumerals are. So P, our principal, is $100. R is our rate. Now it's 9% per annum. Now, what you have to look at, what dictates what time periods both N and R are in, is how often it's compounded. It's compounded monthly, therefore we need our rate in a per month rate, and we need N in a number of months. So 9% was 900ths per annum, which is as a decimal 0.09 per annum, which is 0.09 over 12 per month. N is already in months, so N is simply 7. And we can go ahead and put our numbers into our equation. So it's 100, 1 plus 0.09 over 12, all to the power 7. And if you put that in your calculator, you'll get an answer of $105.37. So our $100 has grown to $105.37 using compound interest. And we'll just do one final example. Okay, you owe $300 on your credit card. Interest is compounded daily at a rate of 10.25% per annum. How much interest do you owe after 50 days? Okay, so again, we start by writing our compound interest formula. And over on the right, we'll list our amounts for our pronumerals. So P is our principal, $300. R is our rate of interest. Now, our rate of interest is 10.25% per annum. But we have to look at how often the interest is compounded, and it's compounded daily. So we need to change this into a daily rate, not a yearly rate. So first of all, let's just put it as a decimal. So 10.25 is 10.25 per annum. That is 0.1025 per annum. And per month, we no, not per month, per day, we need to divide by the number of days in 1 year, which is 365. So if it's that much for 1 year, then it's this much per day. And our N is already in days, that's 50 days. So let's put these numbers in. We've got 300, 1 plus our rate, and N, our power, is 50. And if we put this into our calculator, we get a total of $304.24. So instead of just owing the original $300, we are now owing $304.24. Now the question asks, how much interest do you owe? This is the total amount. So to calculate the interest, it has to be the amount minus the principal, which is our 304 minus the original amount. So the amount in interest is just $4.24. And that's an example of using compound interest.